My name is Remy DeCausemaker, and I'm the open source program manager here at Twitter. All of them, I guess. I'm still learning all of the massive ecosystem of very cool projects at scale that we run here. Our GitHub repo for Twitter alone just has over 150 repos in it. That's not including a number of other GitHub repositories and organizations that all have dozens more projects. It's incredible to be operating at the scale that we do. But the engineering problems that I'm looking at are much less infrastructure and more community infrastructure. So the way I think about what we do with an open source program is more like if you have DevOps, which is automating all the infrastructure things, I think about community operations or ComOps. So how do we automate and facilitate the kinds of stuff that you do to build an environment that helps to build awesome projects? I would say that, there's an old saying, right? I'm a big Linux guy. So they say Linus doesn't scale, right? So you have project leaders or community leaders who are really driving as sort of like a BDFL or, core maintainer, and those folks, a lot of process blocks on them. And you have this fundamental challenge where you have to have people choose between building things and building communities that build things. And people don't scale nearly as well as technology and tools. So coming up with ways to easily onboard people, make them feel comfortable and welcome, to help to minimize the amount of sort of bad apples in the bunch. Those are all standard problems that as you scale up your community that might have started as this wonderful little garden full of great people, as the internet finds you, at scale, just the big numbers game, you're gonna attract all different kinds of attention and problems. And you got to make sure that when you build your community from the start that you're thinking about and considering those things. Just like when you're thinking about scale, when you're small scale, you want to be planning for larger network topologies and bigger data centers and multi-tenancy stuff. I mean, all of that sort of plays true as well with the people that run the project. I'm really concerned with the carrying capacity of the ecosystem. I believe that there's a real danger in the enterprise that if we aren't finding the places of commonality where we can develop sort of commodity level software, similar to what Android has done or the Linux kernel has done, there's a danger that we'll see a lot of over differentiation is the term, where people are going deeper and deeper down in the stack to differentiate their products, and as you get deeper and deeper to core engineering pieces, it costs more and more money to do that because you have to innovate at higher and higher levels on top of it anyway. So the more that we can standardize the different layers of infrastructure, the better it is for people who have limited engineering budgets and limited cycles. The other thing, that's from an enterprise perspective. From a community perspective, I mean, there's only so many hackers, right? And if there's 12 forks of your latest and greatest orchestration framework or database or whatever, there's a lot of duplicated work. And there isn't really a sort of UN of open source, if you will, where it's more of a nation state model where different companies or organizations or communities are thinking about it very much from their personal interest in this. Whereas if we looked more at the ecosystem and we said, hey, like in Linux distro land, there's a really cool project that I got to work on with the Fedora project called release-monitoring.org. And it was just a map, a simple map of here's the upstream source repo, and then here's what the command is to install it on each of the distros, and then here are the webhooks that hook into it. So you could get a real-time messaging infrastructure to say, upstream source has shipped a new version, kick off your tests, kick off your tasks, and see if you can do a scratch build. And if you can, hey, maybe we can run those packaging scripts automatically. So Fedora was checking it out, and Debian was checking it out. And we were using that tool to help reduce the amount of duplicate work in packaging. I'm hopeful that we can see those kinds of collaborations across communities start to spread out into other areas as well. Sure. So functional programmers are wizards. Their brains they tick a little bit differently. When you think in a Lisp or when you can do recursion just as a second nature, it's really special. And working with those kinds of people is really inspiring. The way I describe my technical background is I'm more of a code rogue than a code wizard. I just have a really high use magic device skill. So I understand very well like how to be bold in following the tracebacks down the rabbit hole, and I try to be agnostic about the technologies that I use and experiment with. So I've delved into some corners of functional, but my weapon of choice has been Python, and coming to Twitter has been really interesting because we're a huge Scala shop, and meeting with lots of Emacs hackers and getting more introduced. I think for me to get more into the mindset of functional, I might have to try like Viper mode with Emacs maybe, see if I can start messing with some plugins. Like I think that's how it started for me as just like a hacker in general, was once you start hacking on the tools, then you get to be more comfortable with the mindset of the engineering prowess. There's just a ton of really brilliant people here to learn from as well. So I'm looking forward to learning more about it, but at first, one thing I did learn right off the bat, which was really cool, I was like, yeah, I don't know what all the rage is about this functional programming stuff until I got to the enterprise. And then when I got to Twitter, it was like, okay, well, if you start off with like functional programming, you know what state is going to be. And when you're using microservices, there's just this obvious connection where like, I can hot swap out instances. I can blow away different things in the infrastructure, and it doesn't matter. I don't have to reproduce state and environment when I'm testing. And all of a sudden, it just clicked, and I was like, holy shit, like functional programming is what makes all this microservices stuff really go. And that was like a breakthrough moment, and that was like in my first 24 hours of starting orientation here. So from there, I've been very curious about everything. I'm a community guy, right? So I love to see the overlaps where different hackers are. It's really cool. I'm helping to run the unconference track, which is a cool experiment. I've been working with Travis Brown and John Pretty, who both have been awesome in helping to get the event together. And when you're sitting there and you're looking at somebody's like config for SBT, and somebody had just presented like Circe library, and there it is, like Circe is in the dependencies and it's like being built, and you get to see like upstream hackers talking to each other and doing like real considerate conversations about where the direction of their projects are going, asking for honest feedback. There's real diffusion of ideas. And anytime you can get upstream community members, particularly at like the language level, that's amazing. Like you see, I go to a lot of conferences that are about like web dev or enterprisey stuff, but like really language centric stuff, like the conversations you get into are just madhouse, ridiculous, awesome. Like people, waxing philosophical about algebras and like really deep mathematical concepts, and talking about like the guts of BLAS and Fortran stuff that they're porting, and like really, really low level stuff that the conversations and the content that you get to see here are unlike other conferences. I would say it's like extra wizard. That's probably the best part about Scale by the Bay.